Hi, I'm Frederik from Skyscrapers, and welcome to this first of three short tech talks. To give you some background, at the start of this year, together with the kind people of Cirrus, we surveyed software as a service companies about their DevOps and cloud native status. And based on that, we invited three SaaS veterans for an interview. By the way, if you want to read the survey for yourself, definitely follow the link below, or somewhere in the space around me. Okay, let's move on to the first guest. And the first guest is Tom from Software Captains. Tom's focus is on helping CTOs with people and team challenges. And as you may know, of course, the biggest challenge of them all is the personal growing pains of the CTO, her or himself, as the business is scaling. We're going to talk about hiring, what you should focus on, the mythical full stack engineer, buy versus build, managed versus unmanaged, and many more things. Well, in any case, I hope you'll enjoy it just as much as I did.
Yes, no, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, hello everybody. This is a first in a series of three tech talks, or if you want to call them fireside chats for those familiar with it. Today we'll be speaking to Tom, who is actually already in the chat here. Tomorrow we have Nick Bookart from Cirrus will be joining us, and on Thursday we have a third session with Erwin Gernhardt from Shift Left Security, who will be joining us as well. So if you want to join the future talks, you can use the same Zoom link at the same time every day. Before we invite Tom, I'd like to give you a little bit of background. So we're going to have an open chat. We're going to listen to Tom's interesting learnings and perspective on the DevOps and Cloud Native survey we did beginning this year amongst Belgian SaaS companies. And this survey was completed by CTOs and engineering managers, well, mostly. And the companies we did the survey on was about, well, between 1 to 50 people. We had some outliers there with 200 people, but if you look at most of the results, it's actually between 1 and 50. For those that are interested in the survey, at the end of this week, if you subscribe to this webinar or chat, you will also get a copy of the webinar, not the webinar, of course, of the survey. We're trying to make it a bit prettier and more presentable. So yeah, that's about it. Am I missing anything? Oh yeah, so this interview or this chat will take about 30 to 40 minutes. And just that I don't forget, we have a Q&A option enabled if all went well. So I invite you to ask questions through that Q&A function you have in Zoom. I will do my best, and so will Tom, to monitor the questions, and we will try to integrate those questions into our little chat. If we do forget, please apologize already, and we'll pick up the questions later, but we'll do our best. Okay, so that's that for the practical intro. Also, bear with me, this is the first time ever I do this, so if I mess up, you'll know it's for real. So we have Tom Klaassen on the call on this first chat. Hi, Tom. You are part of software, well, you are Software Captains, if I can say it that way. The way I have my own idea on what you do, but the only thing I really think that stands out is that you work closely with CTOs, where you guide them in some way. I'll ask you in a minute how you guide them. And I think the most surprising fact, or the thing that kind of stuck when we did the introduction call, was that you have no opinion on AWS or Google Cloud or what is the best option for your customers. So that's an interesting way to introduce yourself. So maybe you can tell us what you do.
What I do with Software Captains is I help CTOs who are in tech companies. So what I see is that in many tech companies, when a company is a startup, the CTO is the guy or the girl who knows most about technology, who likes to program a bit. And okay, so there are 3-4 people, 2-3-4 people who are deciding that they want to create a startup. And the guy, girl who programs the most, she will become the CTO. That's all good and well, but after a few months or years, when the company really starts growing, that CTO she becomes very uncomfortable. See, I'm always in meetings. I seem to be always in meetings. People are always asking me stuff. I'm in the middle of everything. Actually, I have the feeling that I don't get my work done anymore because I can't program anymore. I also see that we hired some developers here, but they are not working. Right? They are stuck. They can't get further because I need to assist them all the time. And yeah, what's going on? How can I solve that? And that's what I do. I help them to create a structure and to create a process, to work with people also, to make sure that she can be a CTO and not merely between quotes a lead developer. There's a big difference for me between the CTO and the lead developer, and it's a process. So that's why I don't have any opinion on cloud. Technology is in that for a CTO, technology is important, but I see that the technology is not the most challenging part for a CTO because she already has years of experience in technology. So there is a lot that I can't help them with that. But I can help them with seeing, okay, how do you put that knowledge to good use? And how can you develop your people skills and your management skills? That's the main thing.
Sounds super interesting. I'm very interested in hearing your insights or your reactions to the survey we did, because the survey was quite technical in a way and operational and architectural. So your human view on things will definitely be interesting. Just to give you a little bit more background to the people who are watching, what size of companies and type of companies you typically work for, like just in summary?
Sweet spot for the companies that I work for are tech companies, started to scale up. So most of them are product companies, service companies, although they are very interesting and can be very interesting to work for. They have other problems, and that's not the kind of problems I focus on. The size of the company is about, I think the development team will be about 3 people, 3 FTEs to about 15 or 20 or so.
Okay, cool.
No real upper limit, but I see once you have 40 developers, then probably you already solved a lot of the problems that I can help you solve.
Yeah. All right, very well. I see people are using the chat function. We apparently didn't disable the chat function. Hi, Jos. If you have questions, use the Q&A function. It's a bit easier for me to track the questions. And if you do use the chat, please be kind to everybody. All right, thank you, Tom, for this introduction. Give us a bit background on who you are, what you work for, and how you can relate to these questions. So I propose we dive right into the survey and the questions we have there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so nobody has seen the survey yet except you and me, of course. Just to give the people a bit of background, so in the beginning of the year, together with Siris, we did a survey where we surveyed a bunch of Belgian SaaS companies. We got some from outside of Belgium as well. Most of them were quite in the size range that you mentioned, I think, in terms of development teams, 1 to 20 developers we saw in terms of development teams at least. And we touched on 6 areas. So we talked about team, we talked about cloud technology and architecture, delivery, like CI/CD, stuff like that, more in-depth delivery, architecture, deployment paradigms like container, serverless, all of those things. We touched on operations. And finally, but not least, we also touched on security. So those were like the 6 areas. We agreed beforehand that we just walk through these areas. Oh, there with my camera. Yep, nice, all this automatic technology until it stops working. So maybe the first area, let's start with that, was team. What did you find interesting there?
Yeah, the first thing that I noticed is that the CTOs are saying that they plan to hire a lot of developers in the coming months or the coming year. It's about 2021, so we're already halfway that year, but okay. I think that's logical. I see that everywhere. Everybody is hiring. Everybody is hiring, trying to hire the best people. so I see that there's really a challenge going on there for CTOs to find the good people and to get them on board. I think that actually for for a CTO, it's a very big part of his or her responsibility to be busy with hiring. And I think you shouldn't only be hiring when you're hiring, but you should always be out there. You also always get yourself known, present yourself and your company as fun to work with, and that will help you once you are starting to reach out to hire people. I see a lot of companies where okay, now we need a developer. Okay, now we go on LinkedIn and we send DMs to several people that we think are interested. They won't be interested because they don't know you. On the other hand, if somebody is already on LinkedIn and they see messages appear on LinkedIn or other platforms, they see messages appear about, it's cool, this technology we're using here. We acquired this company. I don't know. There's a lot that you can discuss. Try to paint a picture of yourself as an employer, and then at the moment that you are starting to reach out, they say, okay, that company I know, and that was interesting, and maybe I should think about going to work there anyway.
Okay.
But it should be a conscious effort, and not only of the HR people or the marketing people. It's really the CTO.
Yeah, exactly.
To reach out.
Yeah, yeah. So you're actually saying, if I understand correctly, is to, yeah, as a technology company, you'll definitely probably will be growing. You will need people, and start thinking beforehand. Start about your employer branding, which is a term I don't like that much, to be honest. But before, so that people already know you, and that you kind of get higher in the stack when people start looking for a job or start looking for opportunities.
Yeah, of course. I've already said the image for me. Somebody described it once, but it was more in an investment context. When people first meet you, you're a dot. You're just a dot somewhere. And then if after a couple of months you meet again, then you are a dot somewhere else. And then you can see a trend. And then you can paint a picture and you get more context. So the more that people see you are a company, the more they have a context, and the more they say, oh, yeah, I recognize that. So at the moment that you're starting to reach out, they don't need to think, who is this? What is this about? What is this company where I will get? They will already know that for a good part. That can only help you.
I would argue it's almost like sales. Doing good sales is also staying top of mind, painting a picture, and the moment like a real opportunity comes by, it's people already know you. They kind of know, okay, this is a company that can help us or not help us. I guess it's a similar approach. Okay, super interesting. Actually, if you look at that question in the survey, so one question was indeed, will you hire more developers? And 69% yes, we will definitely be hiring more developers, which is quite significant. Also, one of the questions, of course, we had to ask at Being Skyscrapers is, will you also be hiring more infrastructure, platform, DevOps type of roles? And actually, what I found surprising myself is actually that still 34% in this size of customers still said, yes, we're going to hire DevOps people. What is your opinion on that?
For me, what struck me there is that it says 63% said, yeah, we keep it about the same. For me, it's related to the fact that for me, operations, infrastructure, I'm from a developer background, to make myself clear. But for me, operations is something that just work. I've had my own company where we developed software. I was never bothered with infrastructure. I was always, okay, there's a company out there who likes to do that a lot. I don't like it. We can't make a competitional advantage. Competition. We don't have a competitional advantage by doing it. So why should we bother? I very much like it to just give it to somebody else. Not only because I don't like it, but also because it takes a lot of effort for me to build up all the knowledge. As a development company, we were about, I think, 10 people.
If you almost all developers.
All developers, all developers. If you want to build the knowledge about how to host something or how to build an infrastructure for something, it takes a lot of effort. And that's effort if you're working together with a partner who can do that infrastructure for you, you don't have to bother. They do that, and they have the for them it's valuable to build that knowledge, because that's their job. But also they do that for a lot of clients, not only for the 10 developers that you're using. So they will be much faster in knowing all the platforms and knowing all the possibilities.
Okay.
That doesn't mean
Sounds
that you have to just throw it over the wall. It's not okay. Here it's finished. Start. No, you have to discuss with your partner, of course, and have a conversation with them. But for me, there's a balance that you have to find between learning all the possibilities yourself, and spend all the time to that, and just give it away to somebody else. There is some balance that you have to find.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, thank you. Actually, this is actually a good introduction to the next part. One of the next questions we had, which was more about cloud, and I know you don't have a very strong opinion on which cloud to use. Well, you do have ideas, but so we also asked, so who should be like managing or taking care of the cloud infrastructure underpinning your digital platform, and you were also surprised, I think, with a result there, which is actually relating directly to this question we had before.
Yeah, but I saw that 48% say that they put the development team in charge of the infrastructure. I know that there's a lot of
Is this what the full stack engineer is about, or the full stack?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So there's a trend about the full stack engineer, and people seem to believe that an engineer can be everything from knowing CSS to knowing AWS. I have a hard time to believe that there can be one person who knows who has all the expertise in all those levels from technology. It's also what's also weird for me as a business person then is, why should you invest in building the knowledge about infrastructure? If you're building a product and you're going to a client and you want to offer something to a client, they are really not interested if you're hosting on AWS or on Google Cloud and how efficient you're doing that. And they don't
or Heroku or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But they really don't care. They want to see what is the product that you built, what's in it for them, and that's the value that they see. And I strongly believe that as a product company, you should invest in that and build something that you can show to your users, to your customers, build something that they see the value in, and go further with that. Yeah, so that's why it amazed me that they said there's a development team that should do that.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, so you say, okay, the full stack developer doesn't really exist according to you, because it's impossible to understand the full complexity at every layer, and maybe it's more about the value that these people, these developers, their best, well, their strongest skill, let's say, is to develop business value, the business features which bring value to the end customers. Is that what you're trying to say?
I hope so. That's their best goal. Fortunately, there are also developers who want to develop. They just want to program, and they don't care about that. So I hope that some developers are really knowing why they're doing stuff, why they program stuff, and what's the business value for their customers. Maybe also a nuance that I want to add. It's not that a developer should know anything about the cloud or about the infrastructure. I think that you should be able to talk with the operations people. You should know. You want to be able to have a discussion in the vocabulary that they are using, to make clear and to make your expectation clear and to make clear what is needed. But there's, it's related to what they call the T-shaped profile. So you are good in one thing, but you're also able to talk with the people who are left and right from you. Of course, the smaller your company is, the more that one thing, the broader that one thing is, and the more the wider that you have to talk with other people. That's true. So you should be able to collaborate with people, but you don't have to do everything yourself. That's what I believe.
Okay, and as a CTO, because you were quite strong on it before, how does the CTO kind of influence there? Like, how should they kind of guide this model or these choices? Because if your development team is working a lot on infrastructure, and you know you have to, yeah, how does that work as a CTO? What does should he or she be conscious of?
For me, one of the big responsibility for the CTO is also to decide when do you buy something, when do you build it yourself. I think that's the main role in this discussion for the CTO. I also do interviews myself, and last week or 2 weeks ago, I interviewed Dieter Wechters, and I asked him the same question: yeah, how do you decide when you buy something and when you build something? And what he answered me was, yeah, for me it's pretty simple. The lower in the stack, the tech stack that you are, the more probable it is that you will buy it, because there you don't add the value. You add the value on the upper level of the stack. He said, for me, it's very improbable that I will buy something that's UI related, or that's something that the customer really sees or the user really sees. It's very improbable that you can buy it, because it has to be, all UI elements have to be very fine-tuned to each other. So it's very hard to compose stuff together and to make it to give it a seamless experience. Mm-hmm. But then he said, yeah, for me, it doesn't make any sense to build my own server or something, or to build my own client infrastructure. Yeah, I just buy it. Yeah, that's logical that you do it. And all between that, there are some gradations, of course, and there's a balance that we have to find. But for me, the role of the CTO is to decide and to make decisions. And yeah, you have to look at that and take all the advantages and disadvantages in consideration. But yeah, then his or her role is to make decisions on when to buy and when to build.
Yeah, maybe where to spend time on and not spend time on, and what complexity to take in and what complexity not to take in, and etc. etc. Because I guess in a smaller team, complexity is also sometimes a threat.
Yeah, more complexity is a threat. It's also, yeah, you have to decide where you spend your time on. The most valuable resource, I think, for a product team or for a product company is time. If you decide to spend time on infrastructure, then you're not spending time on building your product.
Yeah. Which brings me to my next question, which is kind of from skyscrapers. Again, it's a bit of a biased question. I'm sorry, but I have to ask you, and please do answer honestly. So, what do you think about Kubernetes? I mean, it's something we do 100%, but when does it make sense? When doesn't it make sense? What is your view on it based on the customer base you're working with?
Let's start out with saying I've never used Kubernetes myself, so I've not done that. But I have witnessed these teams who are spending a lot of time on setting up Kubernetes. For one reason or other, I don't. Sometimes it seems to be complex. I don't know why, or I really don't care. But what I've seen is that okay, we're working with the development team. We want you to build something. Yeah, we'll do that as soon as Kubernetes is set up. And how long will that take? Yeah, it will take a couple of weeks. And that just, I couldn't believe that. Yeah, we're asking you to build something. We want to go to a customer and to see if they really want to buy the thing that we're building. And now you're just spending time on setting up Kubernetes for some reason or the other. I didn't understand it. Again, there's a balance there. In that phase, I would suggest, okay, just put everything on Heroku or some managed platform, and then okay, we'll see what happens. For the other end, a few weeks ago, I met with the SaaS company who was organizing a conference online, all built on Heroku, and then all of a sudden Heroku went down in the middle of a big meeting. Yeah, that wasn't very good for them either. So yeah, there will always be a balance, and there will be a moment that you have to make the switch and to have a more resilient infrastructure, to build a more resilient infrastructure. But you have to really, as a CTO, have to decide when is the time right, and it's not because maybe in a few years' time you will need the full-blown solution that you have to build it now the first couple of months. Because if you spend your time the first couple of months, in a few years' time, you won't exist anymore.
Could it also be that Kubernetes is just an example, of course, but that sometimes it's just the curiosity of the technical people, the developers just take the better of it, and they just are like, oh, we want to play with this technology, and just play around with it.
Course.
Is that sometimes
developers like to learn? The best developers I know, they really like to learn. They want to learn everything about technology, and this is something new. They don't have a lot of opportunities to set up an instance like that. So yeah, of course they will try to do that, and it's good for them. I can see that, but it doesn't add. It really doesn't add value to your company.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Maybe one more question about the Kubernetes one, because it's interesting. You mentioned Heroku. We see that quite often as well. We see Kubernetes. We have customers, and our customers typically are ready to start using Kubernetes. But sometimes we also see customers that are not ready to use Kubernetes, and I'll also tell them, or we push them to a more managed solution like Kubernetes with Fargate, something more dynamic, Heroku-like, if you will. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's if you're probably familiar with the typical cycle of a SaaS company? You have the MVP, you have the product market fit, and you have the scaling. Would you say maybe just more of a correlation between the cycle of the company and where then you would take on that additional complexity? Is there a correlation there?
There would be a correlation, but you can't say, okay, at this phase you need to use Kubernetes, at this phase you need to use I don't know what the next step. I don't think that's the case. But I do believe, once you're really scaling, then scalability becomes an issue, of course. Then once you have 1 million users, you have to make sure that you can serve 1 million users. But if you only have 1 user and you want to acquire the next 10 users, you shouldn't be spending your time on building an infrastructure that can support 1 million users. You have to make sure that those things stay in step with each other.
All right, clear. Thank you. And actually, about complexity and stuff like that, I think I'd like to move on to the release processes and those kind of things. Because one of the questions we also asked, I'm just going to look up the question real quickly here, is who actually decides to deploy new features, new versions. So you had some observations there as well.
Yeah, now I'm looking for the same question myself.
It's page 17.
Yeah, what struck me is that apparently the manager decides who can when to release something, when something can be released in production. Even 42% of that question was answered in that way. That was very weird for me. Why should the manager decide when something is to be released? I believe that's always a deep decision. So you have the developers. Developers have to say, okay, this is ready, and then some QA people or the product people they have to say, okay, this is ready, and then maybe it's the manager who say, okay, everybody says it's ready, then it's ready. But it's not the manager sitting at his desk saying, okay, now we're going to release. Maybe the question was not interpreted that way, but that was what I find it very unimaginable that the manager would decide when something can be released.
Yeah. We did get some more specific answers as well, where there were some people saying it's a development team together with the product team that decides. There was somebody else who says the product owner with the operations team, which is interesting because the operations team, it's healthy, I think, to also check with an operations team if you still have an operations team, which maybe is not the best practice, but that's another discussion.
Maybe the operations team shouldn't be in-house, I think.
Oh, that's even that. You're going to call AWS and ask them, is it okay we release this feature?
Okay.
That's just a way of thinking about it. Okay. I'm just seeing where we are in time. So we're at 44. In the meantime, we did get a question from Jos on the Q&A. I don't know if you can see the question, Tom?
Yeah. How do you think a CTO should optimally divide his time between tech, hiring, people management, and sales? That's a difficult question. I remember that a couple of weeks ago, I talked with the CTO, and he said, I'm spending almost a third of my time on hiring. That was a company that was really accelerating, and they're really scaling up. So they were going fast, and they needed, I think, some developers every week or so. They wanted to have somebody new. I think that's a big part. People management also a big part. Sales also a big part. And but always weird. Tech is the least important part. It's a bit of a nuanced explanation also there. Eh? Yes, you are the most technical guy or girl in the C-level team, but you are the least technical guy or girl in the software development team. It's really weird. For me, a CTO is not the person who is the best in something, and the best technologist or the best programmer or the best architect even, because okay, that's their job. There are people who can do that. CTO is really having the bridge between all those functions: your architecture, development, sales. Be aware of what your clients want. Be aware of what your CEO wants. Build a roadmap. Make prioritization decisions. That's the role of the CTO.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So it depends, I guess, is the answer, but tech is the least probably.
Tech is the least. Hiring is more important than people imagine. And then people management is for most CTOs the hardest part.
Yeah, I remember also the interview you did with Dieter Wachters from Aqua, and I remember him saying, I almost do nothing anymore in terms of technical work. I might ask difficult questions. I have my own opinions, but they're not always followed. And he also said somewhere at the end, I think, that he had this dream of still returning to just doing developments one day. And I thought that was like a very nice statement he made in terms of like his deeper desire still being there to be hands-on with tech.
Yeah, I recognize that. And then again, I remember a few years ago, I was really in that situation. I think, I really want to go back to development. And then but this is a personal story, yeah? But then I picked up the phone and I really called. I saw a job opening somewhere online. I really called the guy. I said, I want to development. And we started discussing about the job, and then I imagined myself again sitting behind that desk, struggling with that little bug until 11 o'clock in the evening. I said, yeah, maybe I'm not going to do that anymore.
Sounds familiar to me. Sounds familiar
CTO,
to me as well.
Yeah, I believe also as a CTO, you can have a lot more impacts on the things that you're doing. You can still develop software. You're still building things, you're still creating things, but you're not doing it by programming anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And you have your experience, and you have to learn from this experience and guide and bring this experience into whatever discussion is valuable with people who are doing
of course.
Actually, another function I think, and you talked about, is another question we touched. It's the question about autonomy, or what one of the questions we asked is also, what are you planning on focusing on this year? And I think 55% said that they want to make their developers more autonomous. So as a CTO, they want to make their developers more autonomous, and that kind of also feeds back into this discussion we were just having.
Yeah, I support that wholeheartedly. I believe that I know that a software developer has to make 1,000 decisions every day. Literally, there's 1,000 decisions that you have to make as a developer. If that developer has to come for each decision, come to the CTO to ask for permission, they won't get very far. So the more context that you give to developers, the more they can make those decisions themselves. The more they will be certain and confident that they make the right decision, and the more that you can see as a CTO, okay, this is really a good decision. So I'm all for that. So the more autonomous you can make your developers, the more the better it is for you and your company. I see some CTOs who have trouble to releasing that. They want to check everything. They want to do each code review themselves. I actually they want to write the code themselves, but they can't anymore.
Yeah.
So they want to control everything. But then you become such a bottleneck, and maybe you can do that for a while, and maybe you can do that until you have while you have 5 developers working for you. But what happens then if you have 10 developers? Are you going to read all that code? And what happens if you have 20 developers? It's not sustainable. And I think if you put yourself in that position as a CTO, I am the gateway through which all code has to flow. You're setting yourself up for disaster.
You're basically the biggest bottleneck in your own organization.
You're the biggest bottleneck, and you will hinder the growth of your own company. So that's very sad to see.
All right. I'm looking at the time. We still have 5 minutes. I would also like to do a wrap up, but I'll take one more. We'll just take one last question. I'll let you read it. It's from Dietrich.
Yeah, I think that's a bit.
It's about the previous topic. Yeah.
Yeah, with managers seeking to retain control of so many aspects.
Maybe we should repeat the question. So Dietrich asks, so there's a recurring issue with managers seeking to retain control of so many aspects. Indeed, including deploying and releasing of features, which we just touched in the previous conversation. So which approach have you found to work the best to teach CTOs to let go of this? And watching the time, maybe just a concise answer. Maybe people can contact you later for the more detailed answer. But Tom, you want a final word on this?
Yeah, I think it's the same answer that I just gave you. So make sure that your people know what to do, why they should make decisions, in what guide them, and then let them know what decision you would make without telling them your decision. So help them to make the decision on their own, so you don't have to control and steer everything yourself anymore.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that kind of wraps it up. I'd love to talk 1 hour longer with you, but I promised everybody I'd stop on time, which is not my forte, to be honest. So I'm trying to do it today. Maybe there's one more question, but it's on the chat from Erwin. He was asking, do you have any thoughts on serverless versus Kubernetes? But I think that question is actually a better fit for tomorrow for Nick.
Yeah, I think
Nick is very strong in the technical area. He does have opinions on technologies.
I agree. I don't have any opinion on this.
So Erwin, I would invite you to join tomorrow if you're available. That being said, where can people reach you, Tom, if they have any more questions or any follow-up?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm mainly on LinkedIn, I think. People can reach out to me via LinkedIn or my website, softwarecaptains.be.
Okay, cool. I will take those links in the mail at the end of the week. We'll give you a little shout out to those locations. Okay, I want to thank everybody. Before I say goodbye to everybody, please do let us know on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever how you liked this first tech chat we ever did. If you have ideas to do it better, let me know. If you would like other people to know about it, don't hesitate to do little shout outs. And if nothing else is stopping you, I'll be seeing you tomorrow with Nick Boekhart from Cirrus. His angle is more technical, more architectural, more about cloud providers. Definitely a different perspective from Tom, so definitely interesting. And actually on Thursday, we have Erwin Gernhardt, who is going to look at all these things as well, but from a security perspective. So organizational security, commercial, the aspects of security, more technical aspects. So definitely also something interesting in these times of GDPR and other things going on in the world. So yeah, I think that's all. Thank you again, Tom.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Is there anything else you want to say to wrap up the call?
Go out and do good work. I don't know.
That sounds nice to me. Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody. And see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.